Well, welcome back, Queen, to another episode of the Creatress of Freedom podcast. I am Annie and I am your host, and I am so happy that you are choosing to tune on in to today's episode. This has been a conversation that I have experienced as a woman in business and continually choosing to invest in her professional and personal development. And also, this is a topic that is being talked about a lot inside my spaces as well. So, we've been having some conversations around maybe partners not feeling like they're being very supportive, or maybe you feel like you see this vision in your business and you want to go after it, right? Like you know that you need some support. You know that there's someone maybe in your field that you've been watching on Instagram or social media or ads or whatever it is, and this person is inspiring you to live a bigger life, is inspiring you to, wow, like you really can have it all if you really wanted to. And so there's a part of you that's like, I really want to invest in this. And so you have a conversation with your partner about it, and maybe your partner is a little bit weary, is a little bit like, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea. Like, that's a lot of money. And they can't often understand the concept of why you would put money into something. So I know from my personal experience, something that my partner had a really hard time with understanding or grasping is that, in mentorship, you invest money into the mentor, but you don't necessarily get something in return for to see where your money's gone, right? And so his analogy would be like, I'd understand if you wanted to buy a boat, or I'd understand if you wanted to buy a motorbike, or like whatever the toy or the asset is. And he would say that to me because he could see where the money was going. And the thing is when we choose to invest in ourselves and into our business, we're not actually physically seeing like the tangible thing on the other side. And that's because this is going towards something that there can never be a price tag put on. And that is your brain. That is developing your skill sets. That is developing your mindset, right? Because if you can start to grow those areas, well, then naturally the money is going to be a byproduct of who you're already being, right? Because it responds to you. And so this is something that I've had to deal with a lot in past relationships. But also, like I said, this is a conversation that is being had a lot throughout my community. And it happens a lot because the women that come into my spaces are often in marriages, or they're in relationships, and so they sometimes feel like they're being held back because their partner is not fully understanding. And look, this is not the case for every single person either. I just want to FYI on that. There is a lot of partners out there that are probably more supportive. They probably believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And they're like, yes, you should do it, do it, do it, do it. And you're like, oh, yeah, but I don't know. Like, I don't know if I can do it. Like, is it going to work? It's a lot of money. We could put that money towards paying off our bills, or we could put that money towards going on a holiday, right? So it also works both ways. But most of the time, it does happen in the sense of the partner is usually the one that doesn't really kind of fully understand it. So that's kind of the approach that I'm going to take today with today's episode, because I see that a lot, right? I see that a lot in my spaces. And so I want to talk into this, and I want to kind of show you from what I've learned over the years around this particular topic. After, nearly $1 million in my own personal and professional development, I feel like I've got a thing or two to teach you now. And not just the money that I've put into it, but also the life experiences that I've also gone through and encountered in mentorship, but then also within my own relationships too. So at the start, I'm going to talk a little bit about my story first. At the start, I started investing in mentorship probably around 2017. Yeah, no, it was probably before that. No, it was probably about, yeah, it was probably about 2017. I started investing. No, now I'm like, actually, no, I'm trying to do the maths. Time goes so fast. So I reckon it might have been maybe 2016 I invested in my first lot of mentorship. And my partner at the stage was on board, right? He actually had to lend me $1,000 because it was a $2,000 upfront payment to get started. And I literally had $1,000 in my bank account that was meant to go for rent the following week. And I didn't have the 2000. And my partner was on the phone call with me with the mentor that I was being approached to work with. And so he, for the first time, really seen how shitty my business was actually going because I was kind of faking it a lot of the time. And so he didn't really know the ins and outs of what was happening in the business or how much debt I was actually in because I held a lot of shame around it. And so I didn't want to talk about it. But being on that phone call, I kind of couldn't hide and I kind of had to be real, right? Because otherwise, what was the point of me being on that phone call? And so to get started, he lent me $1,000 and he was like, if you genuinely believe that you can do this, Annie, then, I'll lend you the $1,000, but you have to pay it back to me. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. So that's what I did. I borrowed the $1,000 from him and I got started with this mentor. And he was super supportive at the start. And then as I progressed and as I grew, all of a sudden, I started changing as a woman. When we first got together in our relationship, I was very much a woman who was still like early 20s. So I still didn't really have a lot of confidence in myself. I didn't really trust myself very much. I got to the stage where I probably relied and depended on my partners for a lot of advice, right? And so I was not as confident as I didn't have my power, is what I'm going to say. And so as I started to continually invest year after year, I actually worked with this one particular mentor for it was like 3 or 4 years in a row and spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars with her, but had phenomenal success. And the thing was, that as each year went on and I started to grow and become really, really independent, and I started to all of a sudden like be able to look after myself from a financial perspective, emotionally, mindset wise. Like I was starting to shift the way that I was seeing the world. I was starting to really dream a much bigger life. And I was like, yeah, I want a house here and I want a house there. And like, I want to take more holidays. Like I really started to see this like big life that I wanted to live. And I started to rewrite all of my mindset issues that I was holding on to that were limiting me to step into this big life. And as a result, my partner started to not like the fact that I was investing in mentorship. And, the ego is very sneaky, and this is all happening on a subconscious level, right? So we have to remember that our partners don't know what's actually going on. And so as a result, he started to have little digs and little like snarly remarks around my investment. Now, he was not funding any of my investments. At one stage, I was spending like $10,000 a month on mentorship. That was with two particular mentors, but one of those mentors was nearly $9,000 a month. The other one was a burnout coach that I was working with, a dietitian. And so I was spending quite a large amount of money in mentorship. Add that up over the years and you'll see how much money I was spending. And so my partner at the time was really having a hard concept of understanding why I was spending this much money, right? But the truth was that as a result of spending this money, I was paying for renovations of our house. We had decked out and we built a brand new shed and we put a brand new gym in there, and it had a sauna, and literally it had everything you could think of. I was paying for us to go on overseas holidays. We did our first cruise as a family. Then my partner and I, we went to Vietnam. Like, I think this one year we were traveling so much, and I was traveling so much interstate as well, for different boot camps and different seminars. And like, the business was providing this lifestyle that we were living. We were going to Melbourne for the weekend, and we were having like big flash weekends where we'd go and dine out and spend $400 on dinner, and it was amazing. But he wasn't seeing that. He was just seeing that this was money that I was putting into mentorship. And like, what was I seeing for it? He couldn't see the lifestyle that we were living, because it wasn't in a lump sum of something. He didn't physically have a boat in front of him that said, here it is, right? And so he had a really hard time understanding it. And that then made me defensive, because I was like, well, what the fuck? Like, I'm not asking you to fund this. Like, my business is funding it. So I don't see what the problem is. But then, when you're a couple, you're supposed to be working together as a team. Neither of us had done any of this work on ourselves, or I had certainly hadn't understood the relationship dynamics when it comes to things like this. And so we didn't really have an idea of what was happening. The only thing that we knew is that both of us weren't being heard, right? At the end of the day, that's really what it was. I wasn't listening to him and he wasn't listening to me, and we both thought we were right. And so, as a result of this, it started to create a disconnect between us. And because I felt like he wasn't being supportive, then I started to feel like I had to go on this journey alone. And this is something that happens a lot. And I see this in my spaces with a lot of women. Some of the women end up being divorced. Some of the women end up leaving husbands or partners, and some of them, work through it and decide that no, they want to make it work. It's got nothing to do with me. It's so much about the woman actually truly understanding her power and what she's truly capable of, right? And when we get to a situation sometimes in our life and our business where we feel threatened, or we feel like our survival mode is activated, we tend to think that we need to have these people around us. But then as you start to do this inner work, you start to realize, oh, hold on, like, it's not everybody else. Like, I have the power to change this situation. And so you start to realize that you can step into this big life that you want to live. And so the confidence grows. You start to clear out those old beliefs. And as a result, your partner starts to feel like they're being left behind, because they can see the changes. They can see the shifts in you. They can see the confidence building in you. They can see how what used to trigger you and upset you is no longer doing that anymore. And they're like, what is happening? I don't want to get left behind. And this was something that my ex used to say to me all the time. You're going to keep doing all of this work. And his biggest fear was that I was going to leave him. You're going to keep doing it. I'm not going to be good enough. And you're going to keep growing and keep expanding. And the truth is, Annie, that you always keep shifting the goalposts. That's what he kept saying to me. When is enough going to be enough? And I was like, I can't answer that, because I see such a big life for myself, and I'm intentionally changing the goalposts, because I hit that goal and then I'm like, no, I want more. Like, it's almost like it's almost like this drive of like, wow, like, I proved to myself that I could get there. Okay, well, now let's see if I can stretch myself a little bit more, and let's see if I can get to this goal. And then you get to that goal and you're like, okay, let me see if I can stretch a little bit more and get to this goal. And then before you know it, you're living your fucking Greek goddess life in Greece. So it's like, constantly keep stretching you just that little bit more. And so his biggest fear actually became a self-fulfilling prophecy. His biggest fear became a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what his biggest fear was that I was going to continue to keep growing and evolving, and I was going to leave him behind. And he used to say to me, you will do what it takes, no matter what the costs are, Annie. You will leave whoever it is that you need to leave behind. And I used to feel really sad by that. That used to actually trigger me, and it used to upset me so much, because I was like, I don't want people to think that. I don't want people to think that I'm leaving them behind. But the reality is he was 100% right. he was 100% right. I am so sure of the life that I want to live. I am so sure of the woman I want to become. I still keep choosing to be her. I constantly keep evolving. I'm still not her yet, right? Because I know that I'm going to keep growing and evolving. And so the thing that he said to me that hurt me the most is actually one of the biggest gifts he could have given me. And that was, yeah, you're right. I am going to keep growing. I am going to keep changing the goalposts. And you're right. I am going to keep like blinkers on, laser focused, getting towards my goals. And if you don't want to come with me on the ride, then that's up to you, right? Like that's up to you. And so as a result, like I said, the situation ended up being his self-fulfilling prophecy because he did not want to continue to grow and evolve with me. And one of the hardest things that I had to do in that relationship, and there was so many other things as to why I left that relationship. And, I haven't actually spoken publicly about that. I've spoken a lot about it in my spaces and with my girlfriends. And there was definitely some great times. I mean, you wouldn't be with someone for nearly 8 years if there wasn't great times, but there was also some really traumatic times as well. And I feel like I'm getting closer to the stage of really being able to lean in and talk more about that, which that's like a whole nother episode. But I really think that so much of, what ended up happening here was that I was determined to reach my goals. And if he wasn't going to come on this ride with me, then I had to accept where he was at. And that is one of the hardest things when you love someone so much and you want them to come on the ride with you. You see the vision, you're so clear and you're like, yes, I see these people coming with me, but they don't want to come on the ride. And oh my God, is that gut wrenching? That is so devastating because you're like, if only you could see. But that's the thing. We're all put on this earth for very, very different reasons. And some people are happy and content with the everyday life, right? And that's okay. And we, as high achievers and like just like fucking send it to the moon people, have to be okay that not everyone is built like us, right? And that was really hard because I wanted him to come on the ride with me. I wanted him to just do the work. I wanted him to see what I was building for us. It wasn't for me, it was for us. And he just could not see that. And so it wasn't until after I left, I ended up leaving this relationship because a lot of our fights were around money. A lot of our fights were around drugs. A lot of our fights were around just the way that we treated each other. And, my work was always such a big part of my life. And, that impacted a lot of our relationship too. And it wasn't until I left this relationship and I actually started working with a different mentor at this stage. And she really showed me things from a very different perspective as to what could have been going on here. And I was like, that makes so much sense. I hadn't looked at it through that lens or through that perspective. When you're so in your space, it can be a little bit tricky to like actually see things from a different perspective, which is why I am truly a big believer in mentorship, because a mentor can 100% give you a completely different perspective on something in 2 seconds. And so she was saying to me, like, it sounds to me like, he was really worried that you were going to leave him behind. And as a result, that did become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And another layer of this is that when you first got together, I was very shy. I was timid. I relied on him a lot, right? Like I definitely was the good little girl who wouldn't speak out of tune or anything like that. I was young and naive. And then as I started to grow on this journey, I started to find my voice. I started to stand up for myself. I started to say things that didn't feel good for me anymore. I started to say that I wouldn't be treated like that. I started to say that these are things I won't tolerate. And, things started to change over the time. My boundaries, my standards, my expectations majorly changed throughout our relationship. And so what that ended up doing to him was making him feel that he wasn't good enough, right? He wasn't good enough. And so, because he felt like he wasn't good enough, instead of having the awareness around it, he started to turn to other things that made him spiral even more, which made me disconnect even more from him. And as I was reflecting and having this conversation with this mentor, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And she's like, you think about it, like he wanted a business and I had the business. He would have loved to have invested in mentorship, but he didn't have the funds like I had. So there was an element of, I don't know if I want to use the word jealousy here, but I think that's kind of really the only word that really fits. Like there was a level of, I was mirroring to him what he wanted, right? Because remember, relationships are always our biggest mirrors. Any that goes for intimate friendships, whatever, right? They're all our biggest mirrors. And so I was everything that he dreamed of having and being in his life. I don't know how many times throughout our I was going to say entrepreneurial career, how many times throughout our relationship he had told me he wanted to start a business. And like, me, because I'm just such a go-getter, I'm like, well, fine, start the fucking business. Like I just don't procrastinate on shit like that. I just take the action. And so I had a hard time like understanding why he just wouldn't take the action. If he wanted the business, then just fucking do it, do the business, right? And so I think ultimately what happened here was all of the things that he was saying around investing and all of that actually was not necessarily anything about me in particular. It was really just all projections, right? Like I said, I had the business that he wished he had had. I had the funds that I was spending, on mentorship, which did he want to spend on mentorship? Look, maybe not, but he would have been spending that money elsewhere. And so there was all of these things that were contributing to bruising his ego, essentially. And instead of having the awareness around it and realizing that I had everything that he wanted and that we were actually on the same fucking team, he created even more of this disconnect by spiraling and, playing the victim in the story instead of taking radical responsibility for how he was being, what was going on for him. And like I said, like we're all doing the absolute best that we can at that very time. And it's only hindsight is the wonderful thing because you can only now look back and go, oh, fuck, it's so clear. I see exactly what's going on, which is why I love when women come to me and they're like, this is what's happening in my relationship. My husband is telling me I need to stop mentorship. My husband's saying that this money should be going elsewhere. My husband is saying that I shouldn't be spending money here, blah, 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 right? And so because I've been through this situation, I can now see and help them navigate what might be happening for their husband. And 9 times out of 10, like when I share my experience with them, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Actually, I can see that. Yeah. Like I can see that potentially a part of me is growing and they're feeling left out or they're feeling like they're abandoned and they're worried that I'm going to leave. And I've had women say that to me that, their man has said like, oh, you're going to keep doing this. And so there's the part of not paying for mentorship is actually got nothing to do with the mentorship. It's about keeping you safe. It's about pulling you down back to where they're at because that feels safe for them. They're not doing this on a conscious level because they want to be mean or nasty. They're literally doing it because they're trying to keep what's familiar and what is safe to them. And so keeping those things is by dragging you back down to where they are. And so this is why awareness and communication in relationships and therapy is so important, because if you're both doing the work on yourself, you can actually come together and you can have a really deep, meaningful conversation about this. And that is literally what happened. So after Troy and I had separated for quite a few months, I packed up and I moved away, and then we reconnected months and months and months later, like 9 months later or something. And we had a conversation, and he actually had been in therapy and everything. And he said to me, he had pinpointed this for himself, that there was an element of him that realized that he was feeling triggered by me because I had everything that he wanted, and he didn't have the courage or the guts to like go and chase his. And so he didn't know how to actually handle that situation. So it was 100% like what my mentor was sharing with me. And then for him to go and do that therapy work was amazing, because we both learned so much about that. And now I get to have these deep conversations with my clients where they're like, my husband wants to get out of mentorship. And I'm like, well, what do you want? And they're like, no, like I want to stay in it. And I'm like, okay, great. So let's see what might be happening right now. And so we have this conversation about what might be happening. And we're like, okay, yep, this could be happening, this could be happening. Also, like, what stories are you running with that aren't even true? Because we as human beings naturally want to create a story that's not even true. And so sometimes this even happens where I'm like, is that actually true? And then my client will say to me like, well, I don't know. I'm guessing that that's probably how he would feel. And I'm like, okay, well, let's not do that, because we should never be assuming anything. So until you're having that conversation with him, then we can have that story completely blown to smithereens. It's so common for us to want to play the victim in the story and be like, well, I'm the one doing all this work and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And like, he's not supportive. But like, we have to really zoom out and see things from a different perspective and see what might be happening for our partner. And then actually just having a conversation about it, right? Like, tell me, like, what is going on for you right now? Why are you feeling like I shouldn't be spending this money? And they're going to come up with everything that makes logical sense, right? They're going to tell you, well, we could be paying that off our debt, or we could be doing this, we could be buying that. I could be, getting the caravan that we talked about getting. We could be buying the kids a brand new bike. We could be going on holidays with that money. But this is where it's up to you to stand in your power, right, in a loving way, and say, I understand where you're coming from with this. This is important to me. Okay, this is important to me that I'm in mentorship, and I really need you to support me on it, because I truly believe that the mentorship is going to help create the lifestyle that we actually want to live. And trying to get them to see it from a different perspective, and also deeply, deeply holding deep compassion that this person is also navigating, whatever their money belief systems are. Maybe they didn't grow up with money. Maybe their family situation was really tight and they missed out on a lot of things. Like, we have to remember that this person that you're dealing with is not because of this adult version in front of you. It's because of all of the past things that have gone on, right? So something that would come up a lot in my past relationship was his parents went through a recession. And so he had this idea and belief that, we had to hold on to money, because what if we go into another recession? Now, that he never experienced that, right? But because his parents had experienced it and had told the kids numerous times about this recession that they went through, and the impact that it had, and the challenges that were occurring from this recession, he then was holding on to that story and was then bringing that into our relationship. So it's really important to understand the dynamics of the childhood that they also grew up in, and really knowing that it's actually less about you and it's so much more about whatever is happening for them. And it's our job as the feminine to truly, truly surrender and to truly learn to understand what might be happening for them in this situation, right? And as you continue to grow and evolve, they are going to get more scared, because they're worried that you're going to leave them and you're not going to need them, right? And a man's responsibility is to, like, and man's natural response is to care, nurture, and provide for you, right? Like, he wants to look after you. And so all of a sudden, if he is not doing that and you're doing that on your own, then he now feels like he's failing as a man. So now his ego is majorly bruised. And unless he's doing any of the work on it, that could make him spiral. And he could end up making some bad decisions and doing some bad choices that could create more disconnection between you two. So it's up to, I believe, the women that are doing this work to really like hold that space for our man as we continue to grow and evolve. And if it does come a time where you have to part ways, like I did in my relationship, just trust that if that's what's right for you, then amazing. Like, do what feels right for you. Ultimately, no one lives your life, no one's in your relationship. People were telling me I was mad for leaving my relationship, right? Like, how could you do this? How could you leave these two kids behind? Like, the stories and the projections that I got from it, but ultimately I had to do what was right for me. And I hope that that doesn't happen for you. I hope that, whatever path you go on, which is why I want to have this conversation with you, because we can save marriages, right? We just have to understand the dynamics of what's actually going on here. And it's not that our partner is trying to be nasty or trying to be controlling or trying to, do all of those things. And look, there might be some circumstances and situations where that actually is the case. So please use discernment as when we're having this conversation. But just really knowing and understanding that the masculine is essentially being emasculated because you're stepping into your power and you're becoming more independent. And so we then get to nurture and hold that space and say, no, like, come with me. Like, let's rise together and build our kingdom together. I want to do this with you, instead of creating more disconnect between the two of you. So I hope that this episode has been supportive for you. If I feel like this was like the thing you needed to hear today, come and let me know. I love when you guys come and drop into my DMs or you send me an email back. It's really, really important to me that I know that what I'm sharing with you is of service. I mean, I feel like I could talk about any random topic all the time, but ultimately I want to be of service to you. So if there's a particular topic that you want to hear me talk on, then I would love to hear from you. So come and let me know. If you are interested in coming into my space, you'll see in the show notes that there is so many new ways that we can do this together. So whether you're a woman in business, whether you're someone who's looking for somatic coaching, maybe you're looking for some Reiki healing. Maybe you feel like you need some oracle guidance reading, whatever it is, right, that you might need. You will find absolutely everything that is on offer at this present moment in the show notes below. So go and check that out. And then this is a kind of a deeper level of work that we do inside Evolve as well. So Evolve is my 12-month mentorship container for the woman who really does want to go on this journey of self-discovery. She really wants to start to find herself again, right? She wants to learn how to lead and trust and honor herself and set really healthy boundaries and put herself first. And she knows that there's some things that need to be healed. So as a result, that's what this container is all about. So it's a beautiful 12-month container. There is so much in the back end around all of the learnings, from chakra teachings to awakening your spirituality, to tapping into your ancestors, to astrology, to human design, and really learning so much about who you are as a person, right? Like, all of these are beautiful tools for you to really learn who you are as a person. And we also have a beautiful healing call that I walk you through. So depending on what has been the theme for the month, I will create something based on that. So sometimes it's relationships, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's boundaries, sometimes it's confidence. It depends on what the theme is, but whatever it is, I create a beautiful healing call with practices and practical tools that you can actually use in your life moving forward from this moment on. So head to the show notes. You'll find all the information about that. Depending on when you're listening to this episode, there will either be a wait list or we will be open for enrollment. So check the show notes to see where we might be at with that. But I hope to see you in that space. Otherwise, I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye for now.